Great. So everybody, today we have a special guest. His name is Chris Dew, and Chris is an Emmy Award-winning director, designer, strategist, and educator. He's the CEO of Blind, which has been a pioneer in the motion design field and has made hundreds of award-winning commercials, music videos, and broadcast promos that combine design, typography, animation, live action, and visual effects for screens and clients of all sizes. His firm's work has been recognized by many organizations such as the Emmys, Huffington Post, Webby, or London International Awards. He's also the executive producer of the Skool and the founder of The Futur, which is an online education platform that teaches the business of design to creative thinkers. Chris also hosts The Process, which is a YouTube channel with over 500,000 subscribers almost, and he lectures all over the world on the business of creativity. And I'm very happy to have him here today. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you very much. Is your name pronounced Jan?
Yeah, Jan, it's okay. Jan, but you can call me Jan.
No, I'll try to do Jan. So part of the mess, everybody, I'm in a construction zone. Right beyond this wall behind me is a lot of construction going on. That's why there's a plastic tarp and everything. So hopefully my video camera will hold up, but I'm happy to talk to you.
Yeah, definitely. So we're happy to have you here. And we're going to focus on pricing today, especially I know a lot of agency owners are listening. So if we could just take it from like a high level overview, maybe you could define first, what's the difference between kind of a person who's a order taker or an agency that's an order taker and somebody who actually can create value or charge premium? What would be the difference for these two kind of entities?
Okay, there's a lot to unpack in your question there. Okay, so the first thing about order taking, and to some degree, we all do order taking. This is where somebody else tells you, I want this isn't done. They've diagnosed the problem themselves and they're prescribing the solution and they want you to execute on that. And at some point, all design gets to be in that space where you actually have to make something. But if you want to have higher value conversations, you can't be the order taker. You have to be able to sit there and say, what's the problem we're trying to solve? And then recommend to your client courses of action once you understand the problem. And that's the thing that I try and teach a lot of people is how to have that kind of conversation and what it is that you're listening for.
Got it. And so, many people never get to move away from this order taking mentality. So how do you actually break this down? Because I know that, I work with agencies. Our clients are 100% agencies and we do lead generation for them. And almost all of them are in this space. There's basically very little differentiation just based on tech stack or maybe their services, but nothing else. So how do you start breaking this and move away to maybe charge more premium and move away from this order taking to maybe creating like a value-based pricing structure and something along those lines?
So I think your motivation can't be purely based around money and the desire to make more money. That's the net result of what happens. That's a byproduct. You get to charge more because what you're doing is more valuable. So if you continue to do exactly the same thing, the expectation of getting paid more or to be more part of the conversation around the bigger decisions, and that's some kind of illusion that you're chasing. Okay. So the first part is you need to recognize, hey, I'd like to change. I want to grow. I don't want to just always be doing this thing. And if you're content making stuff, building websites, doing design, building identities, whatever it is that you do, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying this in a judgmental way, but if you desire to be more, if you want to change, or you want to evolve, you have to acquire the skills to be able to do that. The first thing that you need to realize is you got to switch away from being a salesperson and advocate for the kinds of things you do. You have to become an advisor to help your clients achieve their goals. And sometimes you have to act in the best interest of the client and not yourself. What do I mean by that? So the client comes to you and says, we need a website, and you do lead gen. You have to say, based on our understanding of what the problem is, you're absolutely right. You need a website. Here's some numbers you can call. You don't need me for this because this is not in my wheelhouse. So you need to elevate yourself from the person who's selling and advocating for yourself to one that's advocating for your client's best interest. This is what consultants do. They usually have a framework, some kind of framework to ask the clients enough questions so that they can understand the problems. And what they're doing is they're surfacing some insights for the clients to understand the reason why we're not getting this result is because we keep doing this thing. If we're able to switch that, there's a good chance we'll have a lot more success. So what you're doing is you're opening up the conversation to solve a problem to achieve a desired future state. For example, our marketing campaign is not performing. Chris, we need you to redesign the layout because it'll work then. We want to use red, this typeface, and new logos, make it fresh and clean. If you were the order taker, you go and execute against that. You provide lots of ideas and probably creatively do the best that you can. But what if the hypothesis is incorrect? What if changing the graphics and making it look fresh and updated actually is not the real problem? And more often than not, that's the case. It could be that we're targeting the wrong group of people. So even if we do an amazing job and solve that problem, we're not going to move the needle for them. This is where the strategic thinker is going to ask some questions, say, okay, I understand that your campaigns are performing or underperforming. How are they performing today? Let's establish a benchmark. So that's our baseline, okay? So we're getting a conversion rate of 2%. Let's say the industry standard is 1%. You can come right back at them and say, there's nothing wrong with your conversion rate. You're actually outperforming everybody by a margin of 200% in your sector. I think you're looking for a problem that doesn't exist. Or they could just be super ambitious and say, I want to go from 2 to 4. And then I would then ask them, has anybody ever been able to achieve that kind of conversion rate? And who is it? Can we learn something by looking at that? So what I'm doing constantly is I'm challenging their observation, checking to make sure it's grounded in reality, and to see if we can find examples that we can reverse engineer so that we're going to point them from this direction to a different direction. So that's an example of the dialogue you would have if you want to be a strategic consultant.
Yeah, I think this is super important. However, one big problem I see even before this step is the inability of people to basically book a meeting. Like many of our clients, what they've done, they get a request for a website or something, and basically they email the pricing. Like, how in the hell can you sell over an email? So you cannot actually create value, right? These questions you will not be able to ask. You cannot send a questionnaire. It's all done. So I think before this, they actually have to realize there's certain steps in the sales process, let's say. And how would you break this down for you? Maybe let's assume that this person is able to get them on the initial call. They found them on Behance. You booked a Skype call and you're running through the initial call for the website project, let's say. So what are the core steps that you do with your clients or with whoever you're advising to do on that initial call?
Okay, so there are different tiers that we need to attack here. So the person who finds you on Behance, the likelihood of them being a decision maker or a big client with a big problem is fairly low, because that's not where big clients go to find talent. This is where individuals go to find talent, and there's a big difference. There are exceptions, of course, because people do find us that way too, but it's usually through a mixture of lots of different touch points that they're able to then reach out to us. So the pre-frame, how they find you or how they discover you, is really, really important in terms of establishing that relationship. So if you don't have a website, if you don't have a really great landing or sales page that talks about your process, defines the problem, defines a solution, and then tells them about the services, then the chance of you talking to a decision maker that is going to be a big size business is going to be very low.
But maybe we can assume a few things. So of course there's different tiers. A referral is much easier than somebody cold and somebody who found you on Behance. So maybe this is like a startup CEO. They raise Series A and they're looking to do, I don't know, brand identity or the new website and everything. And so he's a decision maker, right? It's not a huge company, but he's a decision maker. So how would you handle a call with that person who can make a decision? He's an entrepreneur. However, he just fishing around probably. So
however they find you doesn't matter. So now we're in this scenario and we might be slipping into a role play here. I don't know. I feel one coming on, but I don't want to be presumptive here.
I just want to define the steps before and then I'll try to go there.
Okay, so startups historically should not spend any money on anything except for the absolute essential thing, which is to build their product or service or something, right? So design typically is not one of those things unless you're designing the product. If you're an app designer, I get that. So if we're talking about the traditional creative services like graphic design, identity systems, they need something, but how much money do they want to spend? So this is one of the things that I'm talking about right now. I want to illustrate this very clearly for you is that if I come to you and I want to spend a lot of money on identity design, well, that's fantastic. If I'm an identity designer, this is great news for me. But then I'm being an advocate for myself again, and I'm not being an advocate for the client's business. So the first thing I'm going to ask them is this. It's like, why do you want to spend money on this? Shouldn't we be focusing on something else? will this make an impact on your business? So there's a couple of answers they can give you. The most likely answer is no, you're right. Thank you for saying this. So many people want to just take my money, and I feel like you are looking out for us. So you have to say goodbye to business a lot of times if you're an advocate for them. Okay. But in the chance that they say back to you, like, you know what? Thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate that. But actually, our public perception and the way that we look is going to help us to onboard Series B or other or whatever it is. So there's value to us. So then I can naturally proceed. Well, if we do this right, what kind of value would that provide to you? Oh, well, investors will put more money in. So to what amount? $4 million. Okay, so at least now I understand it's a $4 million problem that you're trying to solve. Notice how I'm slipping right into the value-based conversation very organically versus forcing it to happen. So if that's the case, then we can say now the effort and the result are somewhat tied now, because what you don't want to do is make a small effort for a big result. People mix that up all the time. So if you're trying to raise $4 million, you're not going to spend $200 for the effort. They're just grossly out of alignment. Okay. So then you can start to attach the thing that you do to what the client is trying to achieve. So now we're going to charge for the result and not for the effort. And there's a big difference there.
Got it. Okay, so there are a couple of steps there, and I think it's super useful. I do believe everyone is individual. The startup has a different priority than a mid-sized company and an enterprise. What I wanted to try is kind of a role play where I am actually the designer or the creative, and you are the client, which is kind of weird because I know you used to do it the other way around, and I know it's a different kind of framework, but I just want to show people that it's possible. And maybe if we could try something where, let's assume that you have a website that you need to redesign, and you're in the e-commerce niche, and I'm the web designer you approached, and you're one of the decision-making people in the mid-size organization, maybe 500 employee company. So not sure if that makes sense or...
Okay. I'm the decision maker in a 500 person company, and I'm reaching out to you to do what?
To redesign the e-commerce website. You're in the e-commerce niche.
All right.
So it doesn't have to be super specific role play or a very long one. I just want to show guys how to kind of get through those problems and value propositions to maybe a pricing discussion. So we'll see how it goes. Okay. Maybe I'm going to embarrass myself, but hey.
And how? What kind of attitude should I have?
Just a normal attitude. Like, don't give me a hard time because I've never sold a website. So
okay, let's go for it. So somehow we have the conversation. We're talking like on Zoom or Skype or on the phone, right?
Yeah,
so
and you found me on Behance, or you found me somewhere and like, hey, Jan, I really love what you do, and we have this project. So maybe we can start off by
okay, we'll start there. Hey, Jan, I love what you do. I have a project that I need help with, an e-commerce website. How much is it going to cost me to do that? I'm looking for some numbers.
Awesome. So thanks, Chris, for reaching out. Appreciate that you love my work. Basically, before I can give you any sort of pricing or give you a quote or talk about the process, I would really love to find out kind of the why are you trying to build a website? So can you talk to me before that? Why are you building a website right now?
Yeah, I'd be happy to, but I'm new to shopping for this. I've talked to a couple of people. I just need to get a range of price because maybe it's not a good fit for me, and I don't want to go through the whole talking about like what it's for.
Okay, so what are you looking for in the new website?
I'm looking for improved conversion. It needs an overhaul, refresh. I feel like since we designed it originally a couple of years back, it's feeling super dated to me right now. I need help in getting it to visual look better, and also to improve the conversions.
Yeah. So the person or the company that did that for you before, you mentioned in the past, are you still in touch with them or?
Yeah, they're currently doing the site, but I'm ready for change.
So why won't you engage with them? What is maybe kind of the relationship you have with that agency that did that for you before?
Yeah, but Jan, you didn't answer my question. I just need to know a ballpark figure here.
Okay, so I can give you kind of a range. We usually go for e-commerce websites in the range anywhere from 20 to 50,000. It can be
Okay.
anywhere depending on the goal we're trying to solve. So you've mentioned conversions. So currently, how much better would you like your conversions to be in a given month?
Right. So I want to increase it by 1.5%. Is that possible?
1.5%. Well, do you know any other company in your space that have done it like this?
I do not. I don't spend too much time thinking about other companies.
Okay, so I can give you like a industry average because we work with a similar one. I think we can get it up to 1.5. Shouldn't be a problem. We've done it up to 2%.
Okay.
Just
Good.
for me to understand, how much would that mean to your business? What is 1.5 increase in revenue?
For a month, for the year?
Per month, yeah.
For a month, let's say it's $100,000.
Okay. So let's assume it's $100,000. And if I extrapolate that and, talk about an annual revenue, this can be like $1.2 million. So
That's right.
let's assume that's the case. So how much money would you be willing to spend to fix this problem that costs you $1.2 million annually?
I don't know. I mean, if we were to spend money, would you be able to guarantee the results?
Well, when it comes to guarantee, I definitely can guarantee the results. However, we would definitely charge extra on top of that for guarantee. When it comes to just plain website revamp, we don't generally stick to guarantees because we can't really control every aspect of your sales process and everything your company does. So for a $1.2 million project, what do you think is a fair price to charge an agency?
Well, I'm not sure, but before you were saying somewhere between 20 to 40K. When you said that, I was like, oh, that sounded like a lot. But I guess in light of the 1.2 million, it's probably not too much. So
Yeah,
I would be comfortable spending somewhere between 20 to 40K, especially if let's say this. What if I asked you, guarantee me the results? Give me a 1.5% conversion increase. What would you have to charge me to do that?
I believe to do that, we would be around 100 to 120,000, and we can guarantee you that.
Okay.
Because we've done it before and
okay,
pretty much know the process.
Is the difference between that and say 40K for
a
design, so it's basically like 2 to 3 times as much for a guarantee.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, would you be willing to write that in a contract?
Yeah, definitely. I can send it over to you. And
okay. So what happens if you can't get me the conversion, and how long do you anticipate it taking to get the numbers up to there?
It should take us around, right now, 6 months, I guess.
6 months?
Yeah.
Is that pretty typical for you?
It's typical, but I would need to know more about, your website and stuff. But I guess 6 months should be fine.
So how do I pay you if we're not sure that you're going to get the results? What if you don't get the results? What if it only goes up like 0.3%?
Well, we do sprints. So we charge based on basically different, how would I call this, sprints? I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this. So first off, we charge around 30% for the entire project upfront. Then after one part is delivered, we charge another 30. And at the end, once you see the increase, we'll charge another 30%. So that's kind of the way it is.
So the way that I see it is, if you're going to break it up to 3 payments, let's assume that I can pay you the 120K. Okay. So you're talking about 40K for the first sprint, 40K for the second, and then 40K after you hit the results. So what happens after I've spent $80,000 and you're not moving the needle for me?
Well, at that case, we'll give you a refund.
100% refund?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. As long as you can guarantee that. So let me meet up with my my board and we'll talk about this. But I think I'm comfortable with either approach at this point. So can you write a proposal for us? I want to see 2 options. One where we just pay you the flat 40, and one where you can build me a guarantee and outline how that's going to work.
That sounds great. I'll do that today.
Okay, fantastic.
Cool. See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Goodbye. So that was embarrassing, but thank you for. You got me with the guarantee. I didn't know what to say because I do have a guarantee in the place for selling marketing services, but not selling websites. And selling marketing is a bit different. So
hey, how old are you, Jan?
27, 28, gonna be 28. Yeah.
You're gonna be 20 pretty soon. Well, you did a fantastic job. If I could handle a client the way you handled at 28 years old, I'd be the ruler of the world right now.
Come on.
No, really. I'm not blowing smoke up your butt. You did a very smooth job. You applied the things that we just talked about. And I assume you've either learned this by reading books or maybe watching some of our videos, but you're very smooth at it. I can see that you're pretty calm under pressure. So if you can continue to do this, I can see you doing really well in your life.
Well, yeah, I'm almost doing B2B sales every day. So it's not that big of a deal, but you got me with few things and I want to maybe unpack them. So what about the guarantee? How should I respond to that? Because really, I've never had this experience where, because sometimes in marketing space, we do refunds, but if you sell a website, if you sell a complex development project or design project, how do you approach this if a client is asking for a guarantee?
Well, there's a couple of things I noticed. Let me be a little bit more critical now for your audience, okay?
Yeah.
The first thing is when you establish the value at $1.2 million, and then you ask them, what would you spend? You're leaving up to the client, and the client's going to go super cheap on you.
Mm-hmm.
What I would do is I would frame it to say, like, most consultants would charge you anywhere between 20 to 30% of the net yield, the gain in the first year. So that would put us at $240,000 at the 20% mark.
Mm-hmm.
How much would you like to spend? So I need to give him some parameters. Otherwise, he's going to go right back. And I did this on purpose. I'm like, well, I was pretty good with the 20 to 40K. So in doing that, you left a lot of money on the table.
Yeah. Yeah. I think giving like a ballpark makes sense. In this case, it didn't, because then we got into the real discussion.
I'm going to tell you why. Your ballpark, the range was too low.
Mm-hmm.
You should have said 20 to 200,000.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of like a huge spread?
Yeah. And you want to give a huge spread.
Yeah.
There is no penalty for giving a huge spread, because when you do it, that like, whoa, this guy's worked on really big projects before. This is very interesting. So then it will engage him in dialogue. What determines the difference between a $20,000 web design and a 200? Well, now you can go into diagnosing. Tell me what it is you're trying to do.
Yeah.
See, it's a much more organic flow. So when somebody asks you for the price, give them a big range. And in what in government contracts is referred to as the general order of magnitude bid, which is it $10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, 1 million, 1 billion. Where are we? So I'm just going to give you big numbers. And then they'll understand the absurdity of asking for a budget prior to talking about what it is that we're doing.
Yeah.
How am I supposed to know? And you could say that just like without knowing more, between 20 to 200,000, or you can even say 2 million. I've said this before on calls. I've done commercials for $50,000 and $1 million. Where are we at?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Just matter of factly.
So just to unpack this one for people who are listening, maybe mentioning price, even in the beginning, you can name drop it, but just give it a big spread, something around like, hey, it can be anywhere from 20 to 200. But before I talk about that, I would really need to understand the project. So you don't need to give them specific pricing, even if they ask, because you haven't built value. Is that kind of how you can frame this? If they the first question is, how much is it? You know?
Yeah. You can say that without knowing more, this is my best guess, shot in the dark. Mm-hmm. You can say it's between 20 to 200,000. How does that feel? I wouldn't even try to explain it.
Yeah.
So to try to like defend it and to talk more about it is a sign of weakness. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I say between 20 to 200,000. How does that feel? Then they get to respond, that's absurd, Jan. Then you're like, well, let's talk more about what it is that we're trying to do. That's what happens when I have to bid in the dark.
Yeah. Kind of acknowledge what they said and then just move on and don't talk about it.
This is a conversation. So in the sales, do less talking. Mm-hmm. So whoever talks less wins. Whoever talks less, whoever asks more questions is in control of the conversation.
Yeah, that's so true. Especially when you asked about the guarantee, I was just talking a lot there because I didn't know what to say.
So let's get back to it. So when we're talking about the pricing and you're like $1.2 million, and then you would say typically, so it seems like this is the norm, 20% of the gain in the first year would put us at about 240,000 if my math is correct. What do you want to spend? Now you've anchored so high that if they go back to $20,000 or $30,000, like what is wrong? And then you can say, what am I missing here? What am I missing here? So If we can't spend the appropriate amount of resources and energy, are we really thinking this is going to happen? Okay. So most entrepreneurs, most decision makers can see that, wow, if I spend 200,000, but I'm going to increase my sales to $1.2 million, I'm still ahead by about $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
I need somebody to solve this. So the rest of the conversation is going to be around, are you the right person to solve this problem?
Yeah.
It's not about the money.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So when the question of the guarantee comes up, you're going to say something like this. Now, there are things that I can control, and then there are things that I cannot. Right. And hopefully I have the wisdom to understand the difference between the two. So if you would like a guarantee, the stronger the guarantee, the more it's going to look like $1.2 million. Because if I can make that money for you, then it's going to be probably around $1 million. And I'll guarantee, ironclad guarantee, you don't pay us until those results happen.
Mm-hmm. So that's how you structure the payment at that point?
Yeah, you can, but nobody takes that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to spend $1 million. So what we do is we reduce the price, discounted for uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if it's $1 million, I'm going to discount for uncertainty and say, well, then it'll probably be around $200,000 to $300,000 because there's things I cannot control.
Are they okay with this if you phrase it like this, or?
Try. All you have to do is try.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, most people, once I get to the 20% and that price point, we're going to lock into a price and we're good to go. None of my clients have ever asked me for a guarantee, but the reason why I say guarantee is because people who watch our show ask us all the time, how can you guarantee the results? That's why it's important for us to demonstrate it.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't guarantee the results, you're not solving the problem. You're back to being an order taker again.
Right. So what do you think? This was super valuable, I guess, for everybody who's listening. So what do you think of people who charge per hour? I know you have a specific kind of mindset towards that. So
Yeah, charging for hour measures effort and not results.
mm-hmm.
So I'll give you the analogy, and it's one I came up with recently. If we watch a soccer game, a football game in Europe, right, or
Mm-hmm.
South America, in a football game, they're dribbling the ball back and forth across the field. Now, who's the most celebrated person? Who's the MVP? Is it the person who dribbles for the longest or the person who touches it and puts it in the goal?
Yep, that's the person. The
Okay,
last
so
one.
if you're saying hourly pricing makes sense to you, no problem, keep doing that. But what you're saying is I'm charging you for the effort and not the result. So you can
Mm-hmm.
dribble the ball for 89 minutes of a 90-minute game and not do anything to change the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
The other team, the opponents, they steal the ball, they put it in, and it's game over. You've lost the game. So there's too much fascination and attachment to hourly based pricing, I think, mostly because of the way the modern capitalistic system has been developed to measure a worker's value by the time that they work on something. I think it's an antiquated idea. Now, of course, if you work for somebody, if you're a freelancer, a temporary employee, that's how you work. You charge based on time. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people who take on project rates, who are running a company, who are trying to work with the decision makers and not just as a temporary employee. There's a big difference there.
Yeah. And so one big question that comes up now is how do you avoid the scope creep? Basically, how can you actually have a clear specification so that you can do the guarantee and everything? Because we know in this industry, scope is always almost wrong. So how do you make sure, you don't lose money at the end when you promise a price, not based on time and material, let's say, but based on fixed price, based on value, right?
Well, you're charging, you're capturing value, you're doing value-based pricing,
Mm-hmm.
but what you're focused on is results.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to have a clear definition of what the results are going to be. Now, in our example here, let's pretend like these were real. You're going to be content charging somewhere between 20 to 40K, right? And many people listening to this would be ecstatic if they were able to land a project for 40K.
Mm-hmm.
But by doing the value conversation properly, we've gone from 40K to somewhere in the $200,000 range. So that's a lot of room for scope creep. It's more than 5 times the original budget you had in your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start to work on results, there's a lot of room for you to mess up and try again and accommodate the client. So most people have a bad reaction to scope creep because they've brokered a poor deal for themselves. So when the client calls you, you're annoyed, you're feeling taken advantage of and disrespected, almost always because you haven't been paid enough.
Mhm.
So when you go to a really high-end hotel or a restaurant, they treat you like you're the king. Are they unhappy? Is there any request that you can make that they won't try their best to fulfill? Some 4-star restaurants, when you get up to use the bathroom, the chef cooks you a new bowl of food. That is service because they've built it into their cost.
Yeah.
You are paying for that. So that's the problem. So if you feel like scope creep is bad and you don't like it, it's because usually a couple of things. One is you've undercharged. Two, you don't have clarity on the goals. You're just selling time again. So when you don't get paid for that time, you're not happy, nor should you be. But who signed up for that deal? You signed up for that deal.
Mhm. So is it important to have this conversation with a C-level executive, or can a mid manager or somebody like a marketing person who's just, getting bids from everybody else make this decision? Because can they see value as the
No,
same?
no.
No.
You have to work with the decision maker, somebody who has skin in the game, somebody who has something at stake. The reason why is when you talk to a marketing person, even if the marketing director, because they're still an employee, they don't have skin in the game. They'll say, well, our budget for this is this. Whereas
Mhm.
the executive says, we don't care what it takes. I'll find the money to make this work. There's a big difference in mindset and their focus.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. One thing I know, this is a big breakthrough. This was a breakthrough for me, was charging for thinking and doing strategy. So I'm not sure if you can touch on that just quickly, but when did you start charging for thinking? Because I know it wasn't always the case, probably.
No, it wasn't.
So when was that switch, and why do you think this is like the big nugget which most companies don't utilize, or even grown-up agencies that we work with, they don't do that sometimes.
Right. Until you can bill for the time in which you think, you're not charging for it. Until you separate that out, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, you're
Mm-hmm.
not charging for thinking. You're baking that into the making part. And it's very important for me in terms of my own self-validation to separate the discovery and the strategic thinking as a separate item to charge for it, not
Mm-hmm.
the design making part. Now, I've been in business since 1995, and for decades, 2 decades almost, I was basically the order taker. So the advertising agency would figure out strategically what's the big problem to solve it, how to position it. And they would write the script, and then they would ask us to bid on it. So really, our bid was us just trying to solve the visual problem, and it's the tail end of a very long process. Okay,
Yeah.
so we captured a finite amount of value doing that. How do you move up in the chain? How do you create more value? You have to think like they think. You have to acquire those skills about copywriting, about marketing, positioning. You have to understand where the needle is moved. So you have to speak like an entrepreneur. And so about 4.5 years ago, I learned a framework that was taught to me by my friend Jose Caballer to build websites. And I thought, well, this is fantastic. The framework can actually be applied to any problem to help us get to the root of the issue. Once you started doing that, I started charging for strategy. It took me about a year, a little less than a year, from the time in which I learned it, for me to get an actual client to pay me $10,000 to do the thinking part. Once the first job booked, and it took a while, took a lot of convincing here and there. Then the next one came, and the next one came, and then I changed the price from $10,000 to $30,000 because people got so much value from it. So, like a lot of people say, it takes a lot of effort to go from 0 to the first one, but a lot less effort to go from the first one to 30K. I think the last time we did strategy, we charged over 6 figures for it, just for the thinking part alone. Why is this important to you, despite the obvious financial gain that you're going to have? It's important to you because you are finally in a position to help your clients through a process of figuring out what the best uh, methods are for them to achieve a particular result. You get to design a solution, not what it looks like per se. You get to design the solution, which is a very powerful thing. To be at the seat of the table with a C-level executive, with the decision maker, talking to you almost as a consultant confidant. Should we do this? Should we not do this? That's awesome. Now, this is not for everybody. I don't mean to say this that I expect the 200,000 designers that are out there all of a sudden become strategists tomorrow. That's not it. This is for the few people who can hear this, who want this, who desire this, and have the skill set, the communication style, the temperament to be able to do this. Jan, you seem to be a person who can do this. So for people just like you.
Yeah, we do that a lot. And I even bring in a senior guy that I know to do these assessments with me. And we even raised the pricing by that. So it's changed the business, definitely. So maybe we can move away from this topic because there's so much to talk about, and I'll quickly ask you a few questions. Maybe you can just give me yes or no answer. This is called the Notorious Four.
The Notorious Four.
Yes.
You fire away fast because I don't have that much time left. I do need to prep. Okay.
Got it. So first question, cold email is spam.
Yes.
All right. In 10 years, AI will replace sales reps.
Not the way I define sales rep. No.
B2B sales rep. But yeah. Okay. Got it. Everybody can learn to sell. Salespeople aren't bored.
Yes.
And being able to sell is more important than your product or service.
At least as important.
Got it. My last question would be kind of a story. I'm just going to wrap it up very quickly. So you have got a check from the IRS, and it's a very nasty one. You owe them all the money, all the revenue, every house, everything you own will be freezed in a week. You have a friend, he's a tech entrepreneur. He's not a sales guy, or he doesn't have any sales background, but he has this big presentation tomorrow in this enterprise company where he can close a huge deal. And if you train him properly, he's willing to give you 50% commission, which will pay off your debt to the IRS. You have one day to teach him everything you learned in your years of experience in B2B sales. What would be your top 3 things to teach a person who has never been in the sales conversation in this B2B kind of environment?
Okay. So what you need to do is find a big problem to solve. You need to listen to the objections that they're going to have about working with you specifically. And you just need to ask really great questions. Never sell. Listen. Be of service to people. So the idea of sales is an outdated one where we try to razzle-dazzle people with our ability to speak about our knowledge and to use pressure points to get them to make a decision fast. I believe that's a very outdated definition of what a salesperson does. A salesperson sells through curiosity about helping the client get clarity over the problem they're trying to solve, and is a great listener and a great questionologist, if you will.
Got it. Any last book you've read that you would recommend to somebody?
Yeah, I really love, I'm about halfway done reading the book. This is Marketing by Seth Godin. It's his latest book. It's dense. I've reread the first half 3 times already, and I've gotten a lot of knowledge from it. The other books that I'm going to recommend to people is to read The Win Without Pitching Manifesto and Pricing Creativity by Blair Enns. Many, if not most of the concepts that I've shared with you today come from reading just those 2 books.
That's amazing. All right, everybody. So today, this was Chris. Make sure to check him out. Chris, do you want to plug anything, the future, anything you want to talk about, you can talk about now?
No, the 2 things I just want to say, if you want more information, we have a YouTube channel, like Jan said at the top of the show, we're going to hit 500,000 subs pretty soon with over 800 videos. It's called The Future with no E. Drop the E, go. The Future, no E, is here. Okay? Check us out. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Instagram. We're very active, especially if you follow me. I'm at the Chris Do. It's CHRISDO. See you guys online.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you very much, Chris. Take care.
Thank you.